Yes, I will call the January 9th work session to order. Mayor Mark Sukup, Mayor Pro Tem Brett Hansen, Councilmember Lisa Lake,
Here.
Councilmember Robert Oxmacher,
Present.
Councilmember Luke Wagner.
Here. All right, so I'm going to just turn it immediately.
And Mark, if I could, I've got maybe just 1 minute. Yep. Thank you. So Mayor, members of the council, thanks for being here for the work session this evening. You're predominantly going to hear from Justin, but I wanted to say just a few quick remarks before he takes it, which is that as we put the budget together, Lisa and I worked before we had hired Justin. So we made some projections from a personnel standpoint, but the plan was always to get somebody into the seat and let them have the discretion to modify potentially our plan. And so we've been really happy with Justin. He's been a great find for us. He's doing an awesome job. And now he's had 100-ish days or so to get his legs under him. And so he's got some specific recommendations to make from a personnel standpoint. So we're just looking for council direction tonight, since it does involve positions and a little bit of change in schedule. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Justin and he can talk about some of the specifics.
Right, yeah, thanks, Aaron. And thanks, Mayor and Council, especially for, I know it's a long agenda tonight, so I appreciate the time that you gave me here before. So I'll pretty much go over a high level. My agenda today, like Aaron said, the first 100 days, I can't believe it's been 100 days. Time goes by pretty quick. So I wanted to go over my observations and analysis at a high level. And then talk about the need for 2024 mainly, about additional senior civil engineer, and then also some traffic engineering consulting services. And then we'll get what we seek from you tonight for direction. It's just a work session, so of course we just want direction moving forward. And then I do have, if you do have questions, we could answer that at the end of that. So the first 100 days of observations and analysis. I don't know if you've ever heard of the building, we're rebuilding the plane while we're flying it. That's what we have here is we're going from a different model, from more of a private consulting to an in-house situation. So one of the things, I don't know if you'll probably notice on there, if you look at, over there, it's like, well, you're thinking I'm probably drinking, from the drinking cart, but that's mainly what I'm thinking about is just trying to figure out and learning transfer of knowledge. You'll look down on the bottom there and you'll see that.
Explain that.
Yeah.
That transfer of knowledge is learning how to drink more.
Yeah, no, yeah. And then on the bottom there, you'll see that's Don on the bottom of there. So it's basically, how do we, and actually he's a pilot. So it's one of those things I think it's appropriate where he's a pilot. So how do we do that? Or, he's the pilot for a while, I'm the co-pilot, but now we'll be the pilot. And then how do we manage going forward on this airplane and rebuilding it? So one of the, we would like to do is, we had the budget earlier, we had talked about a projection, it's in your packet for the 5 different years, there are projections. And what we had thought, or at least like Aaron said, what they had thought is maybe 25 would be the need for a civil engineer 2 or an engineer 2. So I've looked at it and I think what we need to do is move that up and reclassify it. And I'll explain my reasons behind that. One of the reasons is ensure, a seamless transition and cross-training, transferred knowledge. So as the contract, goes over at the end of 2024, we'll be able to, like in the previous slide, is where the city has the pilot, is the piloting of the plane, have control of that. One of the big things is the size and scope of the capital projects that we have in 2024 and in the next 5 years. So in 2024, we have $34 million in capital projects. I just looked at the Loveland budget yesterday, not last night. And for 2024, they have $37 million budget. So our capital budget's as big as Loveland's, and Loveland's is about 7 times the size of Timnath. So we've got a lot of capital projects in the works, which is amazing for a small town. I think council's done a great job on being able to do help with development and also the capital projects we have for the town. The other thing is $100 million in the next 5 years. So that's an average about 20 million a year. So we do need that in-house, help to be able to manage some of those projects. The other thing I noticed is to create a need for create a pavement management program. So a lot of the streets that you see now are new subdivisions, so they're in good shape at this point. But what happens with roads is they deteriorate over time. And if you don't keep up with it, there's a curve that you maintain, just like, in your house. You got to make sure you do the painting, fix it up. Because if you wait too long, it's almost, you get behind and it's very expensive. So we do need, I believe we need to get a program in place before we get to that point. And the other thing is all these subdivisions are going to, all those streets are going to probably deteriorate at the same time. So we have to have a plan, and we can't, replace them all at the same time. That's one thing I would like the new senior civil engineer to help out with that, or at least with two of them. And the other thing is I want to make sure as we do staff, that we have, full commitment or use of them. And that's the other point is mainly we want staff to be able to manage these projects and programs. But we still will need contract support, will still be needed at the lower level in cost. It's just not cost prudent to have, like, for instance, a CAD person on staff, until you get to a city of, maybe 50,000 or 100,000, you just don't have that person that's going to be needed all the time. So those types of things, specialty contracting. So mainly what we're looking at is more project managers that would be able to manage these programs and projects and have the town, kind of control, kind of manage those. But we would still need contract support at those lower levels. And I'll mention actually one of them talking about is traffic engineering consulting services. So the town is not big enough right now to really have a traffic engineer at this point. We do have, we've gained a lot of signals. So we have like 7 signals, but between them and roundabouts, we have about 15. But as the city progresses, I do foresee maybe in about 10 years, we may need, maybe, like I said, a traffic engineer. But a lot of those duties I'll be handling, because that's my experience. So as we grow, and what we'll do is when we do the next budget, we'll show the new 5-year plan. And what I like to do is do more than 5 years. I'd like to do I'm like a long-range planner type of a person. So I like to project out 10 years, especially as we do facilities and buildings. We want to make sure we don't build a building and then have to upgrade it, because 5 years happens pretty quick. So what we'll do is mainly what I'm talking about tonight is what we need, immediate need we need for 2024. Traffic engineering consulting service is a perfect example because it changes a lot. You have to have a lot of experience in those, in a lot of training. So what we'd like to do is continue to use on-call services as needed for these specialty things. As you know, we had a couple of studies that we did. So with the Bethke, I think that was the Bethke School, and then also the River Pass safety audit we just completed. We still are waiting from the, because there's charges pressed on that. We're not going to know the total details of what behind that. We do know enough information of at least on the city or the town side of what we can do and implement. And these are some things that I was thinking about even before these other studies that kind of say the same thing I was thinking of, is to have a neighborhood traffic calming and safety program. I know all the communities, Loveland had a traffic calming program, Fort Collins, Greeley. So as we grow, we'll get more and more, citizens, more and more concerns. And also to come up with a program so as we do new subdivisions and so forth, we be more proactive and be able to, manage those better. So that's one thing we want them to do. And then also a townwide guidelines for crossing treatments. We want to make sure that we're meeting the national standards and also for safety. And we want to make sure as we build these, they make sense. And we don't want to overbuild. Like, for instance, a lot of times some of the new fancy, some of the rapid flashing beacons, people, would want them like at every intersection. Well, after a point, if you have them at every intersection, they become less effective. So we have to be strategic on when we put these, when they're appropriate. When do we need to have a rectangular flashing beacon? Or even like if it's an arterial, do we need more of an underpass? So that gives us a guideline. The town does not have that right now. So that would help us to implement that. And the other thing is signal timing and progression along harmony. So I think we do have some opportunities for improvement on that too. So they would be able to help out on that. Oh, sure, yeah.
Timing. Whoever's working the timing, take a check. Timing was working great, and then you put in a light and walker, and that light stops on. Everything's just there. So if you could, and I may be wrong, but, I'm not an engineer. What it, I think it does make sense to sort of relook and see.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we definitely want to do. And a lot of that's also going to be kind of the software and because a lot of it, they have to talk to each other. And that's like with the pulse is going to be a huge thing. If we could get the traffic signals to talk to each other and to be able to coordinate those. But definitely that's something we can do, coordinate those. But there's even better, other technology we use in Loveland that we can use as far as what's called an adaptive signal system. So that's even more advanced, but we don't have the technology and system in place. But there is stuff we could do now that we can improve the quarter, like you said, Mayor. Putting a new signal in and the stuff you got to reevaluate, every once in a while as traffic, especially the town like with Timnath, we grow so fast that the traffic patterns are changing so fast. So you almost have to retime those signals with the new traffic. Depending on kind of on our side streets and so forth, how much more traffic we get. So that's definitely was something we want to look at.
By your,
Yeah.
and then that'll give us 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the direction we need is just the direction on it. If we want to add an additional senior civil engineer for 2024, and then also additional funding for the specialized consulting services, which would be an extra $50,000. And that's it. So, yeah, perfect time. Yeah.
If I could jump in, he used the word additional. It's not really an additional position. It's more of moving it forward. So it's a position that was budgeted for 2025. And what Justin's really asking for is, can we pull the trigger in 24 because he thinks the need is in front of our faces versus next year.
Yeah, and what's the dollar request on that?
I don't know.
It's for the position, it's 167,000 with salary and benefits. It's early in the year. I could try and see if there's any potential savings that I identify before I bring a supplemental, but as of right now, that's what it would be for that position.
And then another 50 for the traffic.
Right, yes.
The other thing I might add is this person would be working with the CIP. There are monies allocated in the CIP for this work to be done. So we would be able to pay those to an employee versus paying them to a consultant. So a lot of these things would work themselves out. So I don't think you would incur an additional 167,000 in salary and benefits. I think this person would immediately cut into what's being paid out in contracted labor.
Luke? And Justin, you said you looked at Loveland. And we've got, it looks like it'll bump up to 10.7 for the budget for Public Works and Engineering. Is that correct? On this one here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is that right? And all I was asking is, how do we compare it to other, we budgetarily or CIP, we're as close as Loveland is, but do you have any idea where we stand as far as staffing compared to those other towns or cities or comparable size for FTEs?
Yeah, so we're pretty low. And like I said, for the budget, we're, for them, they're probably, and that's different division, different departments too, like parks. So for their $37 million capital project, I would say they would have about 5 or 6 different project managers.
Okay.
On that. So definitely we're a lean organization, but I think, that's the key. That's where, again, I think we could use consulting to help out and just make sure that we do the main functions that we need to, but still tap into, and especially like development review is a perfect example of where that goes up and down. You hate to staff up for like when it's a busy year. And then, if the economy, stops or drops, then it's like, what do you do with those employees? So I'd like to kind of keep it at the base as far as employees. But then as we could always do contracts as we need for additional services. But, I would say that was one thing that I've, with the 100 days, I've lived in Timnath for 3 years. I saw there was a lot going on. But for a town of this size, it's just amazing on how much you get, the town and council's been able to accomplish on all these improvements. We're punching way above our weight, I would say. So I'm very, impressed.
And my second question is, if I understand right, we've got 34 million next year and then 100 million over 5 years.
Yeah.
So you kind of said this, just roughly calculating out 17 to 20 million in those years, 2 through 5 in that case. Do you have any concerns about to your point of being overstaffed at that point? Like if the capital projects are just kind of falling off, how do you anticipate, is there enough work for this person? Do you feel comfortable that we can cut down on contracts? How do you envision that working?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I don't think we're going to need to cut down, and that's why I didn't want to staff up for the 34 million, dollars and stuff. A lot of that stuff also is like Pulse too, which is managed, but we do want to be involved and kind of to watch that out because I know they have their own, management and stuff like that, but we do want to be involved in that. But no, I think this fits just real good. I looked at my, 20 years or even, 10 years out, and the staffing would do us very well until in about year 10, there's a couple things that are going to happen in this projection, if we continue to grow like we do, we'd almost be double in size according to my projections. Then I do think we need probably a traffic engineer probably at that point. And then the big thing that's coming down the pike is just as our size, when we do the new census, where it's going to trigger a whole new level of stormwater requirements we're going to have to do. So that's something we're going to have to look at. But definitely this will get us through the next 5 years.
Okay.
I don't foresee, we're going to have plenty to do. Like I said, payment management program. The other thing actually I want to introduce our senior civil engineer, Earl, who's joined us. So he's got a lot of background and experience, but one of the other things he brings to the table that we don't have is the facilities. So we're going to do a facilities master plan. So we're going to keep Earl busy and then this other person really, busy. But then even on top of that, we're going to need some help. But no, we're not going to be overstaffed or even understaffed. I think this sets us up very well for the next 5 years and maybe even up to 10 years.
Thank you.
Yes. Can I drill down a little bit more into the dollars and cents in terms of the senior engineer position? Of the 160,000 that we're asking for, some of that can be recouped through CIP. Do we have an estimate as to how much of that?
So I don't know if Lisa does, but I know that's what I'm going to be targeting is probably a capital projects, at least maybe half of their, time. So probably be, 80 to maybe, 100,000. Of course, that's not only their rate, but also, with benefits too, on top of that. But I would say probably at least half of their, actually would be one, I could foresee what I'm envisioning, if I get you're okay tonight, we'll search for that person. But I envision this other person being more of the capital projects manager. So that person would be probably a lot of that time would be to the capital projects, which is already in the budget. So that is already included, like was mentioned before. Just instead, we're going to be doing more of the project management instead of the consultant. And so it's almost kind of a wash in there. So it may not even really hit our just our general fund budget because it's going to be through the capital projects. And that's a lot of cities do that. I know that's what we did in Loveland too. So that's where the cost, then that, especially for the capital projects, those costs for those employees comes out of those programs and it's specific for those capital projects.
Okay. And then on the traffic request, can you talk a little bit more specifically in terms of what we would expect as a deliverable for that $50,000? What's that going to look like when we get the finished product?
Yeah, so there's going to be 3 different things that we'll want out of that. So there will be a traffic calming and safety program that we'll have out of that. It'll be citywide. And again, we'll do a lot of outreach on that. Target to get that done this year. And then also the guidelines for pedestrian crossing treatments, would like to get that done because we have a lot of, things that have come up that requests and stuff. So we want to be ahead of the curve. So that would be some guidelines. I know Boulder has some. Windsor just developed their guidelines. When I was at Loveland, we were working on those because I knew we needed those. So it would just be a guideline, specific documents that talk about crossing treatments. For example, when do you want to do an underpass? So if you have like where we do, Harmony, where you have a 6-lane arterial potentially, we don't want a crosswalk across there, unless it's at a signal or something. But if it's like a high volume, the other thing is we look at the volume of pedestrians, like if it's a rec trail, then we say, well, we probably underpass, makes a lot more sense for those. And then we would look at is like the newer technology, like the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Those are the ones with the lights that you see. Come up with standards, because right now it's a case by case, okay, what do you think? What do we need here? This way it would use national guidelines. And then also we want to be able to be consistent between communities. So drivers' expectations, one of the big things. So when you're driving in Fort Collins or Windsor, so it's not confusing, you're expecting a certain, what does this mean when I come up to a flashing beacon? Also, where do we want those? Sometimes we have to be very careful. For instance, a lot of studies show just putting in a crosswalk by itself doesn't mean it's going to be safer. A lot of people think it does.
Yeah.
But what it does is
Hey,
that,
Justin, I'm going to cut you off there.
Sure.
I think you've made your point.
Yeah.
Do you have another question,
Yeah,
Robert?
just real quick, in terms of the signal timing, so much of our signal congestion stuff has to do with what CDOT's doing at the interstate versus what we're doing in town. Is part of this coordination with CDOT, or are we still kind of doing our own thing? What are the opportunities there?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, we're going to start up another meeting where all the traffic engineers meet to do work on that. So the state does the coordination on the ramps right now. So that would be something we would definitely work with the CDOT, and then even across the street with Fort Collins to work with them. But even I've gotten requests when I did my networking with Windsor. They have the signals, east of Colorado. And then they asked too, to say it would be good to be able to coordinate not only, to the west, but also to the east with them too. So that would be part of that, would be not only coordinating just for within Timnath, but also how do we coordinate then with the state, and then also with Fort Collins to the west, and also with even Windsor to the east.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Would you like to make any final comment?
What's that?
Would you like to make any final comments?
No, again, I appreciate your time and your consideration.
Great. Did you want us to do a head nod for you or what?
Yeah, I think just any comments, whether you feel like the acceleration in schedule of hiring is appropriate and the allocation for the traffic specific. So just any quick comments you guys would have for or against would be useful to us.
I'm not smart enough to know what engineering needs to happen or not, but what I do know is we've grown 12 to 15% in population, and this is showing an increase in expenditures of 12%. So to me, just big picture, it makes sense.
I think I definitely would support moving forward with this. As far as the traffic and the specialized traffic engineering that we've got up here with the consulting services, I would just say if we can move that up. I don't know if that's dependent on the senior engineer or not, but I'd like to see that come out sooner than later if we allocate those dollars.
I would agree on the traffic part if we can get that moved up. And then based on what you said earlier, the more money we can take from the CIP if that person's main jobs are related to that. And since we already have that budgeted, I think that would be good to just to utilize those funds for that purpose as they were kind of designated.
I'm supportive of the traffic stuff. There's clearly a need based on what we're seeing on River Pass, and we've heard a lot of conversation around Bethke and that. And I know that's a separate project that's already had some recommendations. But just given how frequently traffic and safety comes up as an issue, I would be supportive of that $50,000. In terms of the project oversight stuff, we're going to have to manage those projects. We're going to have to spend it one way or another. We've committed to bringing this in-house primarily as opposed to relying on contractors primarily. So Justin, I appreciate, you in your first 100 days, kind of looking at this need. Normally I would express frustration that we have such a big ask right after we just passed the budget, but I understand in terms of timing and the fact that you just got here that that budget process was well underway, but before you had a chance to make these recommendations. So I'm supportive of the ask.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the work session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will take a 2-minute break here and then come back.
Regular town council meeting to order at 6:02. Mayor Mark Sukup,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brett Hansen, Councilmember Lisa Lake,
Here.
Councilmember Robert Oxmacher,
Present.
Councilmember Luke Wagner.
Here.
Aaron, do we have any changes to the agenda? Do we have any public comments, Melissa?
Not for general public.
Okay. Consent agreement. Does anybody have any questions or concerns on that? Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. Reports. Any council person have a report?
I do, just real briefly. On January 1st, I had an opportunity to attend a dedication of a bench out in Wild Wing. This was for the 2 young girls, Cameron and Audrey, that passed away in December of 2022. And this bench is something that was actually organized by some of the police that responded to that call. they raised the money to get this bench together. And just wanted to thank the town staff and then also the folks out at Wild Wing, the HOA and Metro District out there for helping to make this a reality. But there was a real nice ceremony out there, and I just want to take a moment to, first of all, remember the girls and also thank everyone who made that bench a reality.
I'm going to throw out my word of caution that I've thrown out 2 or 3 times, and I'm going to do it again pursuant to the Coloradoan article about Pulse and the huge excess over budget that it has, and how the demand is nowhere near what they had projected. And I hope that we are paying attention on doing our association on the internet, because it looks like to me that the towns that are around that have done it are all suffering from sticker shock. Okay, nobody else? 6A, Ordinance 1, Series 2024, an ordinance adopting registration and campaign finance reporting requirements for municipal candidate committees, political committees, issue committees, and candidates, and establishing penalties for violations. Do we start with the public hearing?
First of all, I can introduce the subject and then we can ask for public comments and open the
Okay.
public hearing. Okay, so you have before you an ordinance number 1 of the new year of Series 2024. And this is a campaign finance ordinance that would adopt similar provisions to what is currently contained in the Fair Campaign Practices Act, which is a state statute. As a home rule municipality, you have the ability to set campaign finance limitations and enforcement requirements. And when a home rule municipality does that, that controls over the Fair Campaign Practices Act and supersedes it, because this is an issue of local concern. And so the town did set some campaign contribution limits for municipal candidates, for that would be just town council and mayor last year. And at that time, there were no limits on municipal candidates. The legislature later did adopt limitations on municipal candidates' contributions, but we were before that. And so this ordinance does not change those current limitations that the town put in place just last year. What it does, in fact, though, is set forth a process for filing the reporting requirements, filing the reports, and for enforcing any violations related to those reports. The campaign finance forms and disclosures are required to be filed with the town clerk. For towns and cities, they're filed with the clerk, as opposed to state offices and county offices, they're filed with the Secretary of State. So, but the town clerk right now does not have any enforcement mechanisms for what happens if a form is not filed. And this ordinance would address that. First of all, it sets deadlines for reporting requirements, and those are consistent with the state statute. They were actually just amended last year as well. So the deadlines that are the same as for state statutes are in the state are candidates are required to file a form, an affidavit within 10 days of becoming a candidate, saying that they're aware of the reporting requirements. And then the reporting requirements are that the committees need to file a report 60 days before an election, 35 days before an election, 15 days before an election, and 30 days after an election. So this ordinance adopts those same requirements. Secondly, it talks about what do you need to report, items over $100, and what is it adopts definitions of the candidate of the committees that are, again, consistent with state statutes for the most part. And it So that's why we're copying some of the language from state statutes, is because as a home rule municipality, once we adopt this, those definitions in the state statutes no longer apply unless we re-adopt them and put them into our code. So that's why you're going to see some overlap with what would otherwise be in state statute that we're now putting into the town code. It also talks about how you terminate a committee. What do you do with the leftover funds? And that's kind of referring you back to the state statute to say what you can do with your leftover funds. Let's see. In terms of violations, what we are proposing and have drafted in this is that if someone has a complaint about a campaign finance possible violation, they would file that complaint with the town clerk. At that point, she would review the complaint to see whether she believes there's some basis to support the complaint that either a report was not filed or a donation was made over the limitation. At that point, she contacts the individual who was who's the respondent, who was claimed to have violated some of the requirements. So either by not filing the required forms or by getting an excess contribution, they then have 10 days to remedy that and resubmit the correct forms, in which case there's not another civil penalty imposed. So this ordinance is really drafted to try to encourage compliance first and to be really cognizant of working with our candidates and with our citizens to try to first encourage compliance. At that point, if within 10 business days, so 2 weeks, it's not corrected, then the next step is taken where the clerk would then refer the issue to a hearing officer who would set a hearing, and both the original complainant and the respondent would have the opportunity to present evidence, and the hearing officer would decide whether a violation had occurred. In that case, they can impose a civil penalty in the amount of $25 to $50 per day of violation. So if there were 30 days of late in filing a form, that would be 30 days. Now, the reason why there's a range is because this could be a first violation, a second violation, so there could be some aggregating factors, including if it's someone who's violated the requirements in the past. So the hearing officer has a little bit of discretion there. In addition, they can have a fine up to twice the amount of either the unlawful donation or the amount that was not disclosed. They can order disclosure. They could order return of the donation, or it says other appropriate penalty that's determined by the hearing officer. So there's a little bit of discretion to consider aggravating or mitigating circumstances. And that's the basis of this statute. This ordinance, excuse me. There's also a requirement in here that I know we may be discussing a little bit, that if there's a contribution over $1,000, that contribution be also disclosed to the Secretary of State in addition to being disclosed to the town clerk. Should we open the public hearing next or have questions? Probably questions next. Questions of me?
Do we have anybody for public hearing? Okay. So, do you want to open and close it?
I'll open the public hearing at 6:12. There's no public to comment. And I will close the public hearing at 6:12.
Okay. Any comments?
I have a couple of questions for Carolyn. So Carolyn, largely what's written here mirrors what's in state law, but there's a couple of places that I think it differs a little bit. One is the state law for filing the major contribution report. So any donation over $1,000 under state law only requires that to be filed within 30 days of an election, essentially to make sure that folks have access to that last minute big money that's coming in. The resolution here doesn't make reference to 30 days. And I'm wondering, is that something that we intentionally omitted the 30 days or was that just an oversight?
I think that's mostly an oversight. So the original disclosure form is going to still have for donations. It's going to have all the donations. It's going to have For large donations, it's already going to have the employer of the individual and the name of the individual. And so I am absolutely comfortable making a modification to only require those 24-hour reports for donations received in the last 30 days. With the thought that you're going to be doing a report 60 days in advance, you're going to be doing a report 35 days in advance. And
So do you want to,
or maybe
make
35
the-
days.
the
Maybe within
motion,
35
or
days
do you
of the
want
election.
Carolyn to, or what do you want to do?
Well, if Carolyn doesn't have any objections, I think it
No.
would make sense to mirror what the state law is with assuming that the reason the state law has that is so people are aware of those last minute big contributions. People still learn about them in those other 60-day, 35-day reports. But from the candidate perspective, I just don't know that there's a need to have to file that within 24 hours when you're still 2 or 3 months out.
Okay. And you agree with making that change, Carolyn?
Yes, I'm very comfortable with that. I don't want this
Okay.
to be overly burdensome. And
Melissa, will
we
you
could also
pull
make
that out so I
35
don't
days,
sign
but-
that thing? Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I have another, and Luke, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. This, I think, was cut and paste from the state law where it talks about that major donor report being filed with the Secretary of State. And I suspect we did that just because that's what the state law says. But every other document in the municipal election needs to be filed with the clerk, the local clerk. I'm wondering, is there any reason that we shouldn't change that filing report for that major report to be filed locally as opposed to with the Secretary of State? That way, everything's available in one place on our website as opposed to people having to go to two.
I'm also very comfortable with that modification. So we're looking at the new section 2-1-40, sub A5. And it would be 2 modifications to require the major to have the requirement to file the major contribution report with the town clerk instead of the Secretary of State, and only for contributions within 30 days before the election. And that is a modification from the state statute, but I understand that that may be more convenient for candidates, avoid confusion. These are confusing enough. And so I'm absolutely comfortable with that as a home rule municipality could make that modification.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Do you have another one?
Thanks. And my last question deals with the $1,000. The maximum individual contribution currently under Timnath ordinance is $1,250. So that's the most that an individual could contribute. I'm just wondering if it's worth having this major contribution requirement for that small gap between 1,000 and 1,250. You know, to get around it, someone could contribute $9.99 and not have to file the report. I just don't know for that, you know, kind of small gap, if it's worth having this step, or if in the future we look at just making the maximum contribution $1,000 and to eliminate that requirement. I'm open to what the best way to do it is, but it just seems like, given that our candidates largely are you know, members of the community, not professional politicians that are applying. I want people, I want transparent elections. I want people to have access to where the money's coming from. But I also don't want to make being a candidate so cumbersome that it convinces people that it's not worth the effort. So I guess all that to ask the question, Carolyn, could we eliminate that gap from the 1,000 to 1,250, or do you believe that that's something that we need to have that $1,000 threshold?
I think you could, the way you would do it is just deleting that whole section on disclosing major contributions within 24 hours. And that really comes down to a policy decision, because we know that there's going to be a report filed 35 days before the election and 15 days before the election. So it's really a policy decision for council to decide how important it is for you to know about large contributions that are made, you know, in those gap periods between 35 to 15 days where you're not going to have a reporting, and between 15 days before the election to the actual date of the election, because otherwise those major contributions are not going to be disclosed until after the election. So as a home rule municipality, I think you could remove that reporting requirement, and then it becomes to a policy decision. And I think we are going to try to get some information on the town's website to help candidates understand these requirements, including a requirement that, okay, be aware in the last 30 days, if you get a major contribution over $1,000, you need to file this report. Another option is probably giving them 48 hours or 72 hours. So I think you do have some discretion here, and then I'd kick that back to you guys as a policy decision. But you could definitely adopt the ordinance with a modification to that one
So what's your
section.
suggestion, Robert?
Yeah, I'd be curious about the feedback from the other council members. My initial reaction is it's such a small gap between 1,000 and 1,250 that at least for the individual contribution, I would maybe not have that requirement. Candidates can still get larger amounts from small donor committees up to 12,500. I would definitely like to see those larger amounts specifically disclosed, but for individual contributions, I would be inclined to say there's such a small difference between 1,000 and 1,250 that maybe we eliminate that requirement. But I'm really interested in the rest of the council members' perspective.
We're talking pennies. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing actually when you were asking the first two questions, is that it's not that much. It's not like our individual contribution limit is like 10,000 where it would have a bigger impact. So I wouldn't be opposed to eliminating that particular section.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay. Luke, you had another comment you want to make, didn't you?
Yeah, I do. I just want to, so we started, so candidates could pick up packets as of January 1st, right? So how does that, how do we get communication out, or how do we get this information? I know you talked about the website out to those candidates and how this might potentially affect them. So what's our plan to communicate this out with these policy changes?
Once this is passed, I would include that in any information that the candidates receive. If they've already picked up and dropped off or picked up anything, I would get it out to them as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So do we need to make a motion to include these changes that Robert made?
I think the motion would be to adopt the resolution or to adopt the ordinance on second reading, except for deletion of section 2140A5.
Okay, what Carolyn said.
And
Do I have a second?
well, let me just, so Carolyn, that would essentially eliminate all necessity to report contributions over $1,000. Is that correct?
No,
Specifically?
they would still be included on the regular reports that would be filed 60 days, 30 days, 35 days, and 15 days
Okay.
before the election.
And my thought is, and I think that's great. For the individual donation, I don't think we need a requirement. If something came in, say 10 days before the election, and a small donor committee dropped a $10,000 check, I think that is something that we may still want to report. Maybe I'm complicating this too much, but
My two bits is, this is the first time we've done it. Let's send out what we got here, and then as we see how it works this election, we can make it modifications.
so your recommendation, Mayor, is just essentially no 30-day requirement for large contributions, period. And
Yeah.
okay. And so we're just relying on the 60, 30, 35, and is there a 15 day?
And 15.
Okay. But anything that comes in in those last 15 days.
Doesn't usually happen in the full meetings.
Doesn't get disclosed. I mean, it gets disclosed, but only after the election, correct?
That's correct. Now, remember, it is a mail ballot election, so likely not a lot of action's going to be happening in the last 15 days because they'll probably want a lot of the campaigning to occur before people start their voting. So that gives you a little bit more comfort, maybe.
And
Maybe.
I think
They
that's
could still get a
important.
contribution at the last minute, but
Okay, so Carolyn, since we changed the wording, will you try her again?
okay, it's a motion to approve the resolution with deletion of section 2-1-40A5.
Okay. Do I so move. Do I have a second?
I'd second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 6B, resolution number 3, series 2024, a resolution approving the 4017 Kern Street minor subdivision. Chad.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Give me 1 second here. While this loads, item 6B is a minor subdivision application for the property of 4017 Kern Street in Old Town Timnath. The owner and applicant is Twin Pines Investment Group, represented by Jeff Hainsworth. The proposal falls within the minor subdivision process, which is the subdivision of land creating 6 or fewer lots. The subsequent step in this development review process would be to submit a building permit following an approval of a minor subdivision process. The subject property is located west of and adjacent to Kern Street within the blocks of 4th and 5th Avenues and consists of 19,065 square feet and is zoned R1 Old Town Residential. The property immediately to the south was also purchased by Twin Pines Investment and went through a successful zoning from that B business district you're seeing there. It is actually now an R1. And they also constructed a newly detached residence built by Mountain Standard Homes, which would likely be the partner in the development of this property. The proposal is splitting the existing parcel, creating a second legal lot. Lot 1 contains the existing single-family residence and the accessory structures and will consist of 11,465 square feet. Lot 2 to the south will consist of approximately 7,600 square feet, which will be vacant land for that future residential development. Both of these properties will remain zoned R1, conforming to the future land use designation of downtown core within the town's comprehensive plan. The proposed lots will continue to adhere to the setback and dimensional requirements of the Old Town zoning district. A neighborhood meeting was properly noticed and held on November 20th to share this application and gather any feedback from the surrounding property owners. No residents attended the meeting, therefore there was not a report included in the packet. This application was reviewed against the minor subdivision criteria, the Timnath Land Use Code, Comprehensive Plan, and Technical Criteria Manual, and has been found to be in conformance with those criteria. The proposal was also presented at the December 19th Planning Commission meeting, where they recommended approval by a 5-0 vote. With that said, staff is recommending approval of the 4017 Kern Street minor subdivision. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Do we have any public comments?
I will open the public hearing at 6:28. I do not have anybody signed up to speak. I will close the public hearing at 6:28.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I have questions.
okay.
Is that right, Mark? Yeah. Chad, I just want to ask, review criteria number 2. There was it looks like would tie existing utilities, no new utilities. Um, is there any need in any of these review criteria to look at transportation? I've seen those in some other ones. Is there any, because it says right there, the utility and transportation design is adequate, but there's no mention in review criteria for transportation. Was there any need for that?
I believe for lots that are of a minor subdivision, 6 or fewer, the review of the impact on the traffic is not necessarily part of the criteria. However, our engineering team does take that into account when we're reviewing it. But if it's just creating one lot with what would be a single family within that, we felt that those impacts were minimal.
Okay, thank you. And then on number 3, again, just identify impacts on adjacent land uses have been identified. Didn't seem like there's any impacts here. Can you just kind of walk me through what that looked like from the town council or town perspective and how you evaluated that?
Yep. So with this one being proposal of another single family detached, we found it compatible with what the character and existing uses are within that block of Kern Street. So we just reviewed to make sure that there wasn't anything being proposed as far as land use that would create those adverse impacts. Infill of a single family residence, we did not feel had a major impact on those surrounding properties.
Okay, thank you.
And Chad, I see that a neighborhood meeting was noticed. Looks like nobody showed up. Just making sure there's been no other concerns from nearby residents or anything raised about this.
Yeah, that is correct. I have not received any calls or emails outside of hosting that meeting. There was no comment on that.
Okay, and the likely builder has done a couple of similar projects kind of right in the area here, and this would be kind of consistent with what had been done there.
Yes, I believe that is the intent. They do have a couple homes that they have constructed on Kern Street already, and then they also built one on Dixon Street or Dixon Ave. So they do have others that they have established already in the Old Town District.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 3, series 2024, a resolution approving the 4017 Kern Street minor subdivision.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
I'll just mention quickly that, it's consistent with what's going on in the neighborhood there. While initially maybe there was some concern about the rezoning to residential and stuff, given that it's right in Old Town, but I think the plan here fits in well there. The lot size is consistent. The added lot size is consistent with some of the adjacent properties. So looks like this will be a real nice addition to the area. I'd support it.
Okay. Do I have, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 4, series 2024, a resolution approving the Timnath Ranch 9th filing plat. Kevin Coble.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will actually present the next 2 items, the final plat and the site plan concurrently, since they both go hand in hand, but we will have separate action items for voting,
Okay.
if that's all right with all of you. So as you mentioned, this is a resolution for the Timnath Ranch 9th filing, final plat, and then subsequently the site plan. The owner is T-Rock LLC, represented tonight by Chris Bebout, and the applicant is TB Group, represented tonight by Mike Walker. This is where we are at in the development process. So we are in the last step of the major subdivision for this filing. We've gone through, actually for this area, we've gone through some rezoning. Then we've been through sketch plan, preliminary plat, and then we are now here at the final plat. And then subsequently, we are also at a site plan for a couple of building envelopes that are being created within the final plat. The property is located generally west of Schoolhouse and Club Drive, south of Harmony Road. The zoning is a combination of R3, R4, and community commercial up along the Harmony frontage. The proposal for the final plat in this ninth filing, as it's known, is for 29 single-family detached lots, 38 paired home lots, 370 single-family attached townhome lots, and then a couple of development tracks for 70 condominium units, for a total of 507 lots/units, roughly within the 109 total acres. Within this final plat as well, are for 5 development tracks for the future commercial development up along Harmony Road. Per Harmony Corridor requirements for the commercial area, the applicant has also provided a development structure plan which depicts the anticipated road network and trail connections, which will be completed in the future when plating and future site plans occur in that commercial area. This final plat proposal also meets the parks and open space requirements for the R3 and R4 zoning, along with the Harmony Corridor landscaping along Harmony Road. They will be part of this plan for the final plat is to make the landscape improvements and Harmony Roadside Trail along that western portion of the Timnath Ranch frontage. They are also including a roughly 1.3 acre central park to the development, and then roughly 37% open space, which exceeds the 25% requirement for R3 and R4 zoning. Of the 37% open space, 53% is usable by the way of multiple greens, greenbelt areas, courtyards, plazas, and multi-use pathways. The density for the entirety of the residential is roughly 8.6 units per acre, meeting the R3 and R4 districts respectively. This is a little bit of an oddity because normally
Kevin, can we step back?
Yeah.
What's unused? To explain on the map, what's unused property?
So for open space?
Yes.
So it's kind of hard to see on this map, but where you see the majority of the green areas, those are kind of their pocket parks, green belt areas, and some items like that. When you get closer, more in depth around some of the condo unit or townhome units, they do have some landscaping kind of between like a sidewalk and then the townhome unit itself that's maybe 10 feet wide that has some plantings in it. That's not necessarily considered usable open space.
Okay.
So what you're seeing here on this map, which is all of the green, larger areas, those are more pocket park, greenbelt areas. That's what qualifies for the usable open space per our code. As I mentioned, this is kind of a little bit of an oddity. So typically for a development with fee simple for sale lots, there generally isn't a parking requirement. However, taking into account the single family attached condominiums and paired homes option, the requirement would be 2 spaces per unit. Each housing product is providing at least a garage parking and then driveway parking to meet 2 spaces per unit. Just as a normal single-family detached neighborhood would. And overall, the project is providing just over 1,800 on-lot spaces, which is those garages and driveways. And then they have a 177 spaces that are off lots. So they are on street, they are kind of in parking banks, kind of spread out through the entirety of the community for overflow parking, guest parking within the townhome and condo areas to provide some additional relief for some spaces that might not be accounted for on some smaller lots. The lot sizes for the townhomes range from 1,800 to 5,200 square feet in size. 2,200 to 2,900 square feet in size for the paired homes. And then for the single family detached on the south side abutting existing Timnath Ranch residents, Those single-family detached lots are roughly 7,400 to 13,500 square feet in size for the detached lots. Then for the site plan, as I'd mentioned, there are building envelopes that were created that are intended to be created within this final plat. For condominium units, those are intended to create 70 condominium units, primarily along the west side of the development. So if you're looking at this map, you kind of see some units that look like an X on that west side there. Those are the condominium units that they are intending to provide with this development as well. Since the site plan is for individual building envelopes, there's not necessarily an overall open space requirement, as they're meeting that open space requirement with the development in itself. But within your packet, you do see some landscaping that's just within the envelope itself, immediately around those condominium units. And as I mentioned with the final plat, they are providing the on-street parking, and then these condominium units also have garages and then that overflow parking areas for those guests and overflow parking. Staff has reviewed both the site plan and the final plat. The final plat does conform with the approved preliminary plat. It's virtually, I'd say, 99% identical. And then the approved sketch plan. The sketch plan actually provided for 508 units. And they're actually one underneath that approval of 508.507. So they're keeping in line with that sketch plan as well, and including the single family detached along the south side of the development to buffer the existing residents on the south. With that, I will turn it over to Mike for a brief presentation.
Here. Yep, it's on now. Kevin, thank you for all your work on this project over all the years that we've worked on this. It's been a long time, and thank you, council, for your time, and mayor, for your time. I know you guys have put a lot of time reviewing these drawings and all that too. So I do want to apologize for John Turner and Warren Turner. They're out on family vacation, so they're not able to make it tonight, but they do wish they were here, as well as Jason Sherrill with Landmark Homes. He's also on vacation too, so he wanted to apologize as well for not being here. As Kevin mentioned, there we go. The timeline I quickly wanted to go over, it's been almost 4 years to get to this point. So again, appreciate everyone's time working on this project. The sketch plan was approved in November of 2020. Had a neighborhood meeting in October of 2022, which we thought went very well and informative, and help the neighbors understand where we're at in the process and what the development's going to do. Last spring, Planning Commission approved this, as you all did as well, in April. And then final plat was approved by Planning Commission last month. So again, a 4-year process, but we're all excited about where it's going. Kevin's mentioned most of this stuff, but I also just wanted to highlight a few other things as well with this development. Just wanted to remind everybody that there were no modifications or variances requested with this development. Went by the land use code, went by the book. It's always our goal to try to follow the rules. There's 507 total units, 70 are condo, and 437, are fee simple townhomes. Again, creating a density of 8.6 units per acre, which I think is, for R4 and R3 zone districts, I think, we're doing very well to kind of mitigate the amount of density in this area. Even though 507 units does seem like a lot, the density is 8.6. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, Landmark does a great job of trying to provide open space and park areas for their developments. I think this is another example of them doing that. There's 20 acres of open space within this development. including 8 neighborhood parks, 2 of which include playgrounds. So again, they're very proud of their open space and the amenities that they provide for their residences. So I'm going to leave it at that. We have our design team here to answer any other questions that you may have. But again, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further comments, Kevin?
I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Okay. Anybody? Go ahead, Lisa.
So this is, do you want comments now as well?
Yeah.
Or okay. I just want to give a little bit of background for some of this, just in case the questions come up. As you all saw on the previous slide, some of this has been in the works for 3.5, 4 years. And some of the things I know that we had talked about originally, which I'm glad is still in there, is that gradual tapering of like the single family, and then it kind of goes up towards Harmony Road. So you don't have all of the higher density right next to the single families that are already down in the south area down there. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And I know I always appreciate, and Brett's not here, so I'm not going to speak for him, but I know he always appreciates the open space area. So I just want to reiterate that fact that there's plenty of green space in the area. And for anyone who is concerned about some of the density or the overall number, I know in past years when we've looked at this, we look at the whole project as well. So Timnath Ranch North, as an example, was a pre-planned community. And when we look at the numbers, there have been times where maybe they move some of the townhomes or condos from one side to the other side. And when we're looking at just one piece, we don't always see that reflected. So I just want to throw that out that, this was part of a bigger picture, and this is getting up to be one of the final areas in the Timnath Ranch North area that is to be developed. And I look forward to seeing what it all looks like.
Luke.
Kevin, can you just go back to the 177 designated off-street parking, and maybe you could highlight where that is in the community? I just couldn't tell from the drawings and everything. I was just.
Sorry, we'll go back to one of ours. So. So I'll try and drive with Chad here as well. So if you kind of see, do you see my hand, Luke?
Yep.
So you see how there's a row of townhomes here. There's this kind of little gray bump out here. So like that's, they had set aside some parking spaces there. There's some parking spaces kind of over here. Some parking spaces, I believe, over here. Some more that are up here. So they've kind of spread. Then there's a couple that are more down over here, kind of then on this east side. So they've spread around kind of roughly some 6, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces kind of throughout all the townhome areas to accommodate, some of those folks that do park kind of on, that have residents that do come that can't use one of their driveways or something. So they have spread it out amongst the entirety of the development. It's not really centrally located. They've kind of put some to accommodate a couple of those units, because every unit's not going to be needing them at the same time throughout the entirety of the development.
Thank you. That was my question. I just didn't want it to be one
No,
area
yeah,
and-
they're not
Okay.
centrally located. They are spread out amongst the entirety of the development. Like I said, kind of in banks of, 5 to 8. I think one of them might be up around 10 in size, but yeah, they're spread out through the entirety of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
On that line with the parking, we have a fair amount of on-site parking here. Do we know, is that going to be permitted or how's that going to be controlled?
That I will turn it over to Mike to potentially talk about. Not quite sure what they were thinking. I have a feeling it's kind of a free for all.
Yeah.
On that overflow parking.
Yeah, the parking spaces are just sprinkled out here and there, so there's not going to be any permitting or,
Okay.
for that. So it's first come, first serve.
I guess the reason I asked that, in other developments, you have a big parking lot that often sits empty because nobody wants to pay for the permit in the complex, and then it displaces all that parking onto other areas that maybe obstruct traffic and things like that. So.
Right, no, that won't happen here.
Okay. Okay. And then I appreciate that there are no variants or any requests with that. This is built entirely per the code, no PD overlay.
There's a PD overlay in Timnath Ranch that's not associated with this filing. They are meeting code requirements, even on height requirements for the townhomes. If you saw in your packet, there's a 3-story unit that still meets our R3 and R4 height requirement allowance. So yeah, setbacks, lot sizes, height, all of it meets the land use code.
I'm trying to remember, is that on the R4, what's the max height?
I'm gonna pull it up real quick. I think on R4 it is 40 feet. I've got the code in front of me just to double check it. Height in both is actually 35 feet, and they meet that on the 3-story that they have within it.
I guess we still have public hearing here on this, right? So
Correct.
maybe we should get through that.
Yeah, there is on the final plat, not the site plan, technically.
Can I ask one more question, Mark?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I know you just sat back down, and this is kind of a random question, but there are a ton of prairie dogs in that area. I personally am not a huge fan of prairie dogs, but what do you all do? And I know I might not like the answer, but what do you all do to the prairie dogs that are living there?
Haven't you heard the new event we're going to carry?
Well, I heard
dog shoot.
I heard some communities will transport some. I heard some will poison them. I'm just kind of,
Crispy Bow with Mark just told me that they'll get a company to move them. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right.
I know it was random, but I walk on the path in the back there and they're all over the place. And so I was curious.
Should one chase you?
No,
Oh,
no.
Melissa, public hearing, can you call?
Okay, I will call the public hearing for resolution number 4, the Timnath Ranch 9th filing final plat to order. I'll open it at 6:51.
Thanks. Bill Jenkins, 5507 Sugarloaf Court. I commented on this back in 2020, and I just want to say the final design is really nice. And I was a big advocate at the time for the single-family homes bordering on that south side, which they've incorporated, and it looks like they went even a little bit farther. So very nice. And one thing I understand that wasn't mentioned tonight that I think is also really important is that there are trails through here and bike trails that will allow you to transit through and get to the future commercial areas, which I think is also very nice. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, Dr. Jenkins. All right.
I will
Any others?
Any others?
Okay,
Okay, I'll close it at 6:52.
thank you. Let's see, do I have a motion to approve resolution? Someone tell me.
I move to approve resolution number 4, series 2024, a resolution approving the Timnath Ranch 9th filing final plat.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a discussion? Actually, I'm going to make a discussion point. I think it's great that we are putting together a plan that young people can afford. And I'm assuming they'll be able to afford it because of it being smaller and that. And I think it's a model that a lot of developers ignore, and I'm very pleased to see that done here.
You know, Mayor, I'll just comment that, this is a significant development with 500 units, figure 2+ people per unit. This is going to increase our population by 1,000 people and essentially, drive 10% growth. But as I look at this, and I know there's been, concerns along the way, has this always planned to be this? This is in accordance with, all of our guiding documents. And I think you've done a nice job on this. So I appreciate it. I echo the fact that we've got the trails coming through there. And I think the height restriction, not asking for a variance to that, I really appreciate. I think the 35 feet there is reasonable. So I just compliment everyone on the literally 4 years worth of work that's gone into this.
Okay. All those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries unanimously. We are at 6B.
D, we haven't voted on
Keep
that
losing
one.
it, yeah.
Correct.
Do we
You still need to vote on 16.
still need to vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're two separate items.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve 6D? And I'm sorry, I shuffled it around. Somebody read that for me.
I move to approve Resolution Number 5, Series 2024, a resolution approving the Timnath Ranch 9th filing site plan.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 6E, Resolution 6, Series 2024, a resolution approving White Wing at Timnath Manor sketch plan. Chad.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a sketch plan application for future land division of the property known as the White Wing at Timnath Manor. The owner is Timnath Land Holdings LLC, represented by Greg Bamford, and the applicant is EPS Group. As you may remember, this property was annexed to the town in March of last year, which time the property was rezoned estate residential, adhering to the future land use designation of rural residential from the Timnath Comprehensive Plan. This conceptual document is the first step within the major subdivision process required for land subdivisions creating greater than 6 lots. This document outlines the potential configuration of the development as well as the proposed density. Acting as the framework document for the rest of the major subdivision process, this property would be subject to the preliminary and final plat review following an approved sketch plan. White Wing at Timnath Manor is located north of and adjacent to Busgrove Road, just west of the Timnath Reservoir Entrance Road and southwest of the reservoir properties. As I mentioned, the property is zoned estate residential. The primary access for the subdivision is proposed from Busgrove Road at the south near the existing access drive, so at the southeast of the property. The sketch plan also identifies a potential access point to the west that could serve existing or future property owners should those properties develop in the future. In addition, emergency access is being proposed from the east to meet the Poudre Fire Authority's requirement to provide the secondary access. The application includes possible open space locations, a pocket park, which is likely to be located at the southwest corner of the property, which is adjacent to the Lake Canal, and provides a continuation of the Timnath Regional Trail from the south to a location to be determined along the eastern boundary of the property to provide greater accessibility to the reservoir. This is in accordance with the Timnath Prost map. The proposed development will provide a minimum of 20% open space and park dedication per section 5764 of the Timnath Land Use Code. Displayed is a conceptual lotting plan for the development that was submitted with this application. This is just for reference only, as the property will still need to go through those future platting and site plan processes as they develop. However, generally, this application is proposing 40 estate residential detached lots, which conform to the maximum density permitted with that RE zoning district, which would be 1 dwelling unit per acre. There was a neighborhood meeting requirement for this application. That meeting was held on October 4th at the Timnath Presbyterian Church with the purpose of gathering feedback and concerns from the surrounding residents on the sketch plan. There were 4 individuals present, and their questions were included in the observation report in your packet. The application was reviewed against the sketch plan review criteria in the Timnath Land Use Code, and staff found that it is in conformance with that criteria. The proposal was also presented at the December 19th Planning Commission meeting, where they recommended approval by a 5-0 vote. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the White Wing at Timnath Manor sketch plan. And with that, I can turn it over to Greg if he would like to add to that.
Thank you, Kevin. Are we on here? Mayor Suka, members of the council, thank you for getting us moved to this next step in the continuum. There's a lot of spaces to the right over there that still need to be filled in on this approval process, but we're continuing on. You've seen it. We were here in March for the annexation and rezoning, and so you've seen the plan, and it's essentially the same as it was then. I was just sitting here observing tonight that what we've seen in the project just before this one tonight and this one are two opposite ends of a spectrum of how the general plan works in your town, which is the higher density, more affordable type housing on the one hand, and then the application of large lot development, which will be a very low density and a whole different type of product. So you have achieved, I think, what is intended in offering a lot of variation in how the town of Timnath will build out. I really don't have anything specific to address. You have your packet, you've had staff working, and I'll answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay. We might ask you later.
Sure.
Thanks. Or did you have something? No. Yeah. So could you call the public hearing?
I will call the public hearing. I will open it at 7:01. I don't have anybody signed up,
Okay,
so I will
Can you
close
close
it at 7:01.
okay. Let's see. Comments?
I guess I have a question. I'm just confused in the letter about secondary buildings, and that was included in the EPS letter that was in the packet, and we talked about that, so I just don't understand what that means and what that means to the project and in accordance with the single-family lots.
Yep. So within their narrative, they provided the intent or vision of what this development could be. With that would be the use of secondary structures, which could be accessory structure within the town's code. And so it is an allowable use. And so they would be proposing potentially that could be an accessory use or accessory dwelling, which is permitted within the code, but would be reviewed as we go throughout the process to make sure it's in conformance with all the code criteria.
Thank you, Chad.
Anybody else? Do I have a motion to approve resolution number 6, series 2024, a resolution approving White Wing at Timnath Manor sketch plan?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those, whoops, okay, does anybody have any discussion?
Yeah, I'll just kind of incorporate the comments that we went through before, and I appreciate some of the work that went through to connect the trail here, and I don't think we need to rehash it, but I'm glad to see things are still on track.
All those in favor of resolution number 6, series 2024, resolution approving the White Wing at Timnath Manor sketch plan, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution, number 6 carries unanimously. Resolution number 7, series 2024, a resolution approving 2024 law enforcement agreement between the town of Timnath and Larimer County. Chief.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight seeking approval for a contract with the Larimer County Sheriff's Department for the full year of 2024, but anticipating that we will be 24/7 come June 24th. The cost of the contract is $241,378, which is a considerable increase for last year. But
Is that for the full year, Chief?
it is.
Okay.
It is. It works out to roughly $60,344 a quarter. And we anticipate the 24/7 coming on in June 2024. Questions?
Does anybody have any comments for the chief?
I have a couple of questions, Chief. They're essentially doubling the cost of the contract, right?
It is double.
And that was at the request of the county commissioners?
It was, I don't believe it was at the county commissioner level. At least I'm not informed of that. It was at the sheriff's department level.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I very much appreciate the sheriff's department helping us out all these years. But doubling the cost of the contract is concerning.
It is. Their costs have gone up considerably. Dispatchers average $70,000 a year now. Deputy sheriffs are a whole different kettle of fish. They have implemented at least a 10 or 11% raise across the board for the sheriff's department. So they're very competitive, but compared to the other jurisdictions, I think we're getting a significant deal.
And I guess I try to, justify this cost and compare it to, what our overnight staffing would approximately be an average of 2 officers, right?
Correct.
And so I try to compare this 240 to the cost of, how many officers do we have to employ for a year? And does that cost more or less? And at least my quick math is, well, we're still getting a pretty good deal. Is that right?
It is. It is significant.
You just said 24/7 in June, which I'm really glad to hear. We have a target date for that. I think the contract requires either party to terminate with 180 days notice, right?
That's correct.
So are we essentially giving that notice now, or are what's our plan for that?
It'll probably be in written form. Prior to the end of the first quarter, I will notify the sheriff, but I have already verbally consulted with him as a matter of fact yesterday. So he knows it's coming.
I think his point is if you give notice at the end of the first quarter, then you have to use them till the end of the third quarter.
Or at least pay for it to be.
Yeah.
So one of the things we discussed was maybe amending the contract rather than terminating the contract, and then you don't get into that 180 days. Now, you would need mutual agreement of the parties, but I think that there still makes sense to have an agreement with the sheriff's office, because some of the things that are in there, like it talked about having.
Well, that's not the point. The point is, do we want to have, first off, we got to accept whatever price they give because there's not a second group that's going to come in. So arguing the price is sort of a fruitless mission. I think the key is that we don't get trapped. And I think Robert came up with a very good point that if we don't cancel it yet 7 days ago, we're on till June 30th. Or if we don't cancel it by then and continue on, and let's say we cancel it today, we have to use them till September 30th and incur all the costs up till September 30th. So are we paying attention to where we are?
I will consult with Carolyn and absolutely make sure that we are out of the contract, an amended contract.
Is there a way, Carolyn, to have, rather than the 180 days notice, that we have it written into the contract where it's 30 days notice or even 60 days notice? So that we'll have a better idea at that point to be able to cancel, because I would hate to pay money for services that we're not necessarily getting, which I realize that you mentioned that you feel like it's a good deal, but sometimes I question whether it is, because I know they're not stationed in Timnath. I know they're not always available. And so when it says that we're paying for a 0.5 FTE deputy, are we really? Do we actually have that person at a 0.5 FTE? Because if we're paying for it and it's in the contract, I feel like we should have them as a 0.5 FTE. So that's two separate things, but
Carolyn,
that would be my suggestion.
can I jump in? But I think what we're saying, though, is police services are terminated. We're not going to terminate dispatch services, right? Is the whole because there's still services we want to use after police services are done. So is that correct, Chief? Like, there'll still be services used?
It is.
Okay.
Victim witness, victim advocates, dispatch. Of course, we have access to the jail, the jailers, the computer systems. So there's additional costs, but it's just rolled into this.
So
this
I think that's to
document.
your point, Carolyn, is amending the services as well as the contract. Is that correct?
That's what we anticipated. So actually, the chief and I discussed that exact issue and talked about whether it made sense to give notice of cancellation. And it discussed that it didn't make sense to give notice of cancellation because of the victim advocates and all of the other pieces that we think it's unlikely we would terminate the contract, more likely we would amend the contract. Now, if the county didn't agree, but that requires mutual agreement. So I think the next step would be to make sure that the chief talks to the sheriff in the next month and that we either determine if we need to provide that notice or reach an agreement that it could be amended.
We're too late. We're too late to make that.
But we haven't signed it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so we could go that way. I agree. I agree with you totally. But this idea that we can sign it and merrily go on our way, and we've got to give 180-day notice. It's impossible to give 180-day notice.
Well, you could give 180 days notice that you would cancel it on July 10th. And so then it'd only be a 10-day overlap, because I don't know if we will be exact. We don't know the exact date that we're going to be 24/7. Okay, we've got an estimate, but certainly the council could approve it with a modification to allow for 60 days or 30 days notice of cancellation. And we have not discussed that with the county. I do not know how receptive they're going to be to that, but if not, we'll be back
we
next
couldn't do
week, in
60
2 weeks.
days or 30 days because it's too short. They got people that they've hired and stuff like that, so that won't work. But 90 days ought to, and that would get us so that we got a month to sit there and negotiate with them, and go from there. So I mean, I got two things. One is I do not want to approve this motion as it sits right now. We can bring it up in 2 weeks and talk about it. But what my suggestion is that we change it to 90 days, which gives us 2.5 months to negotiate with the county, gives them enough time to sit there and arrange their police force for whatever happens, and is, I think, fair to everybody.
The sheriff is desirous to get out of coverage overnight. So
Now, Chief, just, once we go 24/7, there are still portions of this contract that we still want them to provide. There are still services. So-
That's correct.
So even if we had a certain date for 24/7, we wouldn't want to cancel the contract.
Well, we need a new contract. I mean,
Yeah.
what we got here won't work.
Well, Mark, I think yours is a good suggestion to approve it with 90 days tonight. I do not think the sheriff will balk at that. And I don't worry about them having to worry about additional hires. In fact, I was just in the Colorado one last week. They are substantially understaffed. So they are not going to want to devote their manpower to Timnath one day longer than what they need to. So they will be amenable to this. I think it's a great suggestion. I think a motion to approve with the amendment of 90 versus 180 is highly appropriate for the circumstance.
And then give the time. You know, we need the services. That's great. And we should have them and we should negotiate it in such a way that it works that way. But to say we'll take all the services and we have to give you 180 days, it seems a little onerous to us.
Carolyn, I'm wondering, can we look to separate this out and have a clause that pertains to all of the ongoing services that we expect to need all of this year and likely all of next year, and then separate out and talk about the specific need for overnight patrol response?
Absolutely.
I like that.
You know, if we did that, I think we might want to put this, you know, continue this for 2 weeks, because if we're talking about that big of a separation, then we could draft that a little bit. Or we could just approve it with a 90-day termination.
Chief, do we know how, sorry, go ahead. Do we have data that shows how often the sheriff's office responds to calls during those hours, of like how many man hours they've actually spent on Timnath calls? Like, do we have an idea of that, whether it's monthly or annually or?
I don't have the hours per se, but they capture, I'll call it Timnath time for the overnight calls. Generally speaking, it's for domestics or problems at one of the retail outlets and traffic matters. I believe their arrests overnight are absolutely minimal. They'll probably range in, aside from DUIs, they'll probably categorize about 10 arrests annually.
What about just the calls in general? Is it every night that they get multiple calls?
It's less than 100 a month.
Okay, thank you.
So would they feel more comfortable for us to come back and say, change this whole contract to 90 days, and then we negotiate during that time, or to continue this for 2 weeks and give you time to negotiate for that 2 weeks and come back? And I personally don't care which one. I think it's more of the question of, they've been good citizens for us, and they've been a good working partner for us. I don't want to screw them up, nor us. So which one would they feel the most palatable?
I think I'll converse with Carolyn and then draft up at least a commentary regarding the sheriff's department's contract as written, and do the suggestions or modifications then. So I don't think that the sheriff is chomping at the bit regarding a ratification tonight.
Okay.
So I think we have some
So maybe what we
time.
do is do a continuance and then do the, and I'm going to ask you guys, I'm not running roughshod here, that we do a continuance till next meeting, and then you have enough time to deal with the sheriff's department and come back with, you've heard our concerns, and come back, try to meet those concerns.
Very good.
Okay.
The agreement is going to be effective January 1. So even if it's approved at the next meeting, it will be retroactively in
Yeah.
terms of the price that you're paying going back to January 1 at that higher rate.
I don't think we have much of a choice on the price. I think the only thing we have is the timing.
If I could, the only suggestion I would make that would be in favor of approval tonight with the 90 versus the 180 is I don't know that 2 weeks will be enough. When I think about the county attorney's office and the deadlines, I think it's pretty unlikely we could turn it around in 14 days.
So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution number 8 with the change of from 180 days to 90 days.
I'll second.
Anybody? Okay. All right, discussion.
You know, they're gonna get paid. Like, we're gonna work this out. I would prefer to work it out right. I think it does make sense to delineate what we expect to be ongoing services versus the services that we expect to terminate this year. And my recommendation would be to table it, whether that's 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I don't care. If we table it 2 weeks and it's not ready to go, we can retable it. But I'd prefer to take the time, get it done right. They're great partners. I want to recognize that. We want to be fair to them. I don't think that there's a need to rush this through.
No, I agree with that, but I'm deferring to Aaron where he's suggesting that we make it 90 days. Now, I don't care. I'm either way, but I defer totally to Chief and totally to Aaron. Which way, just tell us so that we can make a decision.
Yeah, Carol and I were just speaking. We're both in agreement that the 90 days is a good way to go, and then we can bifurcate. That gives us much more of a window versus trying to look at a 2 or even a 4-week window. Feels a little rushed to bifurcate, and the 90 days would, I think, accomplish that. So it's a little bit of a stopgap, but I think it gives us a better window to do what you're advocating for, Robert.
And then what we could do is we could start drafting the new contract that would take over in June or July that would have the lower scope of work.
Okay, so maybe I didn't understand the 90-day proposal. Your proposal is to essentially sign a 90-day contract immediately and then negotiate a new one?
I believe the motion was to approve the contract as is, but with a 90-day that allow the town to
Instead of
terminate it with
180, it'd be
90 days.
90 days.
So what we could do is come March, give the notice of termination effective June or July.
Okay.
And then at the same time, we draft an entirely new contract. So when it terminates, we'd be presenting you with the new contract that would have the limited scope of service.
Yeah.
Okay, well, whether it's 90 days or 180 days, we're not intending to cancel the contract.
Yeah, we are.
We're intending to eliminate the patrol coverage,
Well,
but
Carolyn can jump in, but in a way we are, because we're negotiating a new contract after June or July 1, we'll say. And so whether you amend it or cancel it and start anew, it's going to fundamentally change. So in a way, you could say you're canceling it and providing a new reduced scope contract that would then go in effect July 1. And that's why I worry about that short-term timeframe. I worry we're going to be tabling this like a month or more. By the time it's drafted and reviewed, it represents a significant change from the contract. So I just think a longer runway is more appropriate.
Okay. Did you want to?
Yeah, I just think, I like the idea of 90 days, putting it in there, but I know we've talked a lot about that staffing model and it's going to have to be very, how do I say this? I know you guys are doing a good job, but it sounds like we're going to have to hit all the steps correctly through that entire process to make that June 30th. So I'm from my perspective, 180 days. I just don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves and think that we're going to absolutely have this deadline. So I'm fine with doing 90 days, but I think that there's a lot, if we lose staff during this time, if there's anything that happens in the hiring process, the training, we would be more than 180 days at this point. And I also want us to consider, I know there's services that we will want to do, but I just don't want us to drop anything and push too hard on one or the other and have those fall apart together. So I just want to throw that out there, and I'm fine with the 90 days at that point, but I just wanted that to be considered.
Okay, let's have a vote. All those in favor of the resolution 8, series 2024, excuse me, all those in favor of resolution number 7, series 2024, resolution approving 2024 enforcement agreement between Town of Timnath and Larimer County as amended to reflect a termination of 90 days.
I think I already seconded,
Okay.
right? Is that correct?
I don't know
Okay.
if we did.
You're right.
I don't know if we did the change.
You're right.
Okay, all those in favor,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Chief. Resolution number 8, series 2024, resolution approving changes to the Timnath Town policy regarding Timnath Reservoir. Tom.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In your packet was the policy manual with the red line changes proposed for 2024. The suggested changes came about based off a request from staff and resident input. The suggested changes were brought before the Prost Committee and approved. Just to give you a high level highlight of the suggested is we decided that we would like to have an official defined season for motorized boating. With the unique water year, with the water being up so high, we had people boating up until through November. And just from a staffing standpoint, that's kind of hard to budget for and to manage. So we had a defined season. We also wanted to define boat rentals. We have been providing boat rentals for 5+ years. We use a third party that rents to residents only. They drop off and pick up the boats, and they also train the boaters. So just putting that in there in the definitions. We're recommending the removal of caps on GMA and anglers. Basically, it's not needed. Just like for GMA example, only 30 of the 40 non-motorized GMA permits were sold. So I don't believe the caps are needed. When it comes to the angler, we're not really needed, and it could potentially open up a partnership with Colorado Parks and Wildlife by not having those caps, because I know they had reservations in the past for that. So we will be keeping the 65 cap on motorized boating. I think that's a good thing. As we get bigger, we start allowing 75, 80 boat permits, and we don't have the room for all of that. So we're defined and clarified policies around horses on the reservoir property. We're not really set up for horses. We will allow it, but there's some regulations at the ditch company, such as they don't allow horses up on the dams. Clarified boats must stay 200 feet from shore unless entering or exiting the reservoir. Clarified added a section of amplified sound from radios on the boats that must conform with Article 9 of Timnath Municipal Code. And then we're going to do a limit of 14 boats at one time. Last year, we had a limit of 10, but we could go up to 14. That discrepancy wasn't uniquely or uniformly applied, so we're just going to go with a hard 14. So those were the changes. Do you guys have any questions?
Council.
No questions, but I just have a comment. So I was at the meetings with the Prost Committee, and I just want to reiterate that, first of all, thank the members of the Prost Committee, and they really look closely at each and every issue that we talk about. So every point on here was definitely part of the conversation, and all the members of the Prost Committee felt very comfortable with bringing this to council.
Okay.
Kind of interesting that we only sold 30 non-motorized boat permits. Am I the only fool out there buying a permit for
That
my
was for
paddleboard?
No, that was the GMA, the Growth Management Area. So overall, non-motorized boat permits that were sold was just over 1,000.
Oh, okay, good. Thought I was the fool.
No, that was the GMA. We don't have caps on residents for shore or non-motorized boat.
Okay,
permits.
great, thanks.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 8, Series 2024, resolution approving changes to the Timnath Town policy regarding Timnath Reservoir?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, resolution number 8, series 2024, resolution approving changes to the Timnath Town policy regarding Timnath Reservoir, approved unanimously. Resolution number 9, series 2024, resolution approving the adoption of a memorial policy for parks, trail systems, and roadsides.
Yeah, so we have come up with a memorial policy. And the actual policy consists of two memorial policies. One is for the placement of memorials within the town's parks and trail systems. And the other is for temporary roadside memorials. Park memorials will consist of three options. Where option one is we can use an existing bench within the park inventory, which we had to fix a plaque to. Option two is we would work with a donor or sponsor to purchase a new bench with a plaque and place that in an appropriate location. So we would work with the sponsor or donor for that particular location. And option three would be consider alternatives to a bench on a case by case basis. So if you're interested, you can see down on the bottom right hand of that slide is what our standard bench is that we're currently using. And so the life of the memorial is not intended to remain in perpetuity. After 10 years, the donor can renew. If the donor declines, we'll remove the plaque. So alternative memorials. So we're working on an alternative memorial as we speak, where there's a chess table that we're looking at placing at Timnath Community Park that would fit within this policy. I was asked for some clarification on how long the alternative policies would last. And so I will be adding to the policy that alternative memorials will be maintained through the life of the manufacturer warranty, but will be evaluated annually thereafter and will remain as long as it is functional, up to 10 years. And so there are prices associated with those that would cover costs. For option one, we're looking at $1,000, which is $500 we would use to help increase inventory later, but the plaque is $200 and $300 for staff time and install. The other option is $3,000 for us to purchase a bench, affix a plaque to it, and put it in there. The benches are run $2,300 a bench, and the plaque is $200, and then $500 for the time that it would take to install. So, and then option three, the sole responsibility of the cost would be for the sponsor or the donor. And so those are what we're considering for parks and trails. And then as we were going through this policy, we wanted to go ahead and update and make sure we had something in writing for a memorial policy for roadsides. A definition of a roadside memorial is a temporary roadside display of an item or items that memorializes a site where a person passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. Right now, we're looking at allowing temporary memorials for up to 90 days on town right away. A family member or designee could request a roadside memorial sign, such as the one that's in the picture, with Public Works would have fabricated installed within relative distance, but that sign would meet MUTCD standards. And those can be customized. So that one just have a don't drink and drive, but we could have please drive safe, seatbelt saves lives, please watch for bicyclists, et cetera. And this policy actually mirrors the city of Loveland and Larimer County. And so that is what we have for those policies, and just want to know if you guys have any additional questions.
So I hate nitpicking, but I'm going to nitpick this time. And that is it looked like the bench was wood.
Correct.
So those wood benches deteriorate so fast and so bad. The ones that Loveland has are absolutely beautiful. They're metal. They look good after many years. And I'd like us to sure take a look at using a different material.
Okay, I think Brian has something to.
The wood benches that we use are a sustainably harvested wood that survives. Like, so even the ones we put in the first phase of the community park 7 years ago, they're still in good shape. They just need to be kind of touched up every once in a while with some stain.
Which is my point. The ones that are in Loveland, they don't have to touch them up, you know? And so we're incurring extra costs to touch up something that we don't have to if we use the right material.
Are they painted? Because they probably would need to be.
They're power quoted, I'm sure.
So those still get chipped and have a maintenance requirement on them. We can look at other benches.
Anybody else?
I've got comments, but go ahead.
No,
Lisa.
go ahead. You can go first.
You know, I just want to thank Tom and the staff for putting this together. I really appreciate that you read the policies of surrounding communities and made ours better and put something out there. So I really appreciate that. For me, putting a timeline on a roadside memorial is tough. Like when we talk 90 days, that's really tough. I know families go through different grieving processes and different closure processes. So we talked about this in extent, and thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Tom, for talking with me. And I feel like 90 days is a good timeline, and I really appreciate that there's clarity in the policy of what comes next. So thank you, guys. I just want to ask the question, like, I know we talk a little bit about not all the trails are ours. Some of those might be metro districts. How do we work through that with benches and how that would work?
I think it would be our intent to work with the metro districts, have an MOU, memorandum of understanding or some similar document to be sure that they would be okay with that. And then I think we could actually extend our inventory into that space. We haven't pursued that yet, but I think that would be our intent, is to start that conversation with the metro district, especially immediate adjacent to the park, community park.
I have a general comment after, but that's all my questions.
Yeah, and we did work with the Metro District to place the one at Wild Wing.
Did you have any more?
Just in the discussion, I'll have a comment discussion.
We're in discussion.
I think in formulating this memorial policy, I just want our community to know that the town council and town staff, our policy was grounded in compassion and empathy. And so I think that we thought a lot about it. I appreciate you guys so much. And I think we're committed as a community to fostering memories of our loved ones. And I think this does a great job. So thank you.
Good comments, Luke. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mayor, could I just add
Susan-
something
I'm
real
sorry.
quick?
I didn't
Sorry.
know you didn't.
So Luke, I appreciate you mentioning the whole time for roadside memorial, because the Prost committee was really, I think they really took to heart the whole policy and how you navigate that with families that are grieving. So I appreciate that you asked questions about that as well. I do have a suggestion as far as the alternative ones where you mentioned up to 10 years, either like the warranty or up to 10 years. Can we maybe not cap it at 10 years? Because if there's something, for example, if there's a chess table that's put in that in 12 years is still in really good shape, like I would hate to take something out that doesn't need to be taken out. So rather than put a cap, maybe just, I don't know if we could reword it, or, if it reaches the end of its lifespan, we can remove it or something to that effect, just because I wouldn't want to, it was on one of the slides here. I wouldn't want to limit us removing something that's still perfectly acceptable, I guess.
Yeah, we can do that. We were trying to avoid have anything in perpetuity forever. And how does this last longer than So that was just trying to take that judgment call out of the staff's hands by having a permanent date. But if that's what you'd like, I'm more than happy to take that out for the alternative memorials, because those are probably going to be a little bit more of an investment anyways. So, I mean, it does make sense.
No,
No, go ahead.
No, I just really wanted to thank the staff for putting this together. This is a really tough issue in terms of how do you honor, a life, especially those lives that are so tragically lost. And, I think back to the bench memorial on the first that I spoke to earlier, and appreciate everyone. There are several people in this room that attended that. And you showed on the screen the roadside sign, which was Gavin, who is someone who's very special to me. And just seeing that makes me think about his family, and what we're doing here is important, and I appreciate all the work that went into this. Certainly the loss that causes these to have to come up, can never be repaired. But I think this policy is a good way to reasonably manage these tragic events when they come up. And so I just want to thank everyone for putting the effort into this, and I appreciate the flexibility, especially with the chessboard, and I know that chess was important to that young man, and so I thank you for putting this together. Is I guess what I'm saying.
So do I have a motion to approve the resolution number 9, Series 2024, a resolution approving the adoption of a memorial policy for parks, trail systems, and roadsides?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Resolution number 10, Series 2024, resolution setting ballot title for Charter Amendment Initiative. Carolyn.
Okay, so there is a charter amendment citizen petition that has been submitted to the town clerk. And if you look at the attachment to resolution number 10, series 2024, in Exhibit A, it has the full text of what is proposed to be the charter amendment. And it would add a new section 15.8. We have a responsibility under our existing town charter to allow for citizen initiatives, and it's also a constitutional right under the Colorado Constitution, and that process has been followed. The process is that a committee of 5 residents can submit a proposed initiative, and then the town clerk certifies the petition as to form. At that point, they circulate it to collect signatures. Because they were requesting that this be put on a regular election as opposed to a special election, there was a requirement to collect signatures from 5% of the registered voters at the time that the initial petition was certified. They have done that. They've circulated the petition and returned to the town clerk on December 11th, 2023, the petitions with the required 348 signatures. The clerk reviewed 19 petitions containing 415 signatures, certified 365 signatures to be valid, denied 46 signatures. So either they weren't a resident of the town, the signature didn't match what was on file for the registered voter, some other reason for denial, duplicates. And she did not review the signatures of 4 petitions because there were enough signatures, so she didn't have to keep counting at that point. Pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 31-210, subsection 3, if the town clerk finds that the petition is sufficient, which she has, the governing body shall set the ballot title for the proposed amendment at its next meeting. This is your next meeting after that December certification. So we are presenting this resolution to you to set the ballot title, and there's also a requirement to publish notice of the charter amendment that has been submitted to the paper and will be published no later than January 10th. That publication is going to include the entire text of the proposed amendment so that your residents can see that entire text. So if you look at Resolution 10, it does set what the ballot title is. And by ballot title, that also includes the ballot language that will actually be put on the ballot. And you can see that, I can read it to you because it's only a couple of sentences. Well, one sentence. Shall the Home Rule Charter of the Town of Timnath be amended to prohibit the town from annexing any real property that is encompassed by a permit issued under Colorado's mine land reclamation statutes where reclamation of the property has not been fully completed, to apply such prohibition to pending annexation applications, and to provide that annexations are final and effective only where there are no legal routes to challenge the annexation process. So when you're setting the language that's going to appear on the ballot, you want to avoid confusing language, and you want to be obviously accurate to what the proposed amendment is, to be clear and then unambiguous as to the language. So we spent a lot of time working together with staff.
So you've
draft this
done that,
language.
and
We have.
And so unless you think you need to add more, I think you gave us a good summary.
Perfect.
Okay. Council, any comments?
Do we know, and obviously they could have appeared at public comment today. Do we know if the folks that submitted the petition have reviewed the language and if they had any feedback?
I do not think we've heard anything back from them. So this has been posted in the public packet that's been on the council, on the town website since Thursday. And we have not heard any feedback.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution number 10, series 2024, a resolution setting the ballot title for Charter Amendment Initiative?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, this is obviously required by both town code and the Constitution. I appreciate the effort Carolyn put into and others to draft the language. That's always the challenge is, does the language tell the voter what they're voting for? And I think, Carolyn, you did a nice job to do this. So I'm supportive. I don't have any suggested amendments to the language, and I think the law requires us to pass this here tonight.
All those in favor of resolution number 10, series 2024, resolution setting ballot title for Charter Amendment Initiative, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Resolution number 10, series 2024, resolution setting the ballot title for the Charter Amendment Initiative passed unanimously. Resolution number 11, a resolution appointing Michael Lowry to Planning Commission alternative.
Thank you, Mayor, and Council. Tonight, Michael Lowry is here, and I want to thank.
Sorry, Michael, you got stuck for the whole meeting.
He gets to witness the entire thing, so hopefully I'll make it very quick then. I'd like to thank Brett Hansen, Mayor Pro Tem, as well as Planning Commission Chair Phil Goldstein and Kevin Coble and myself. We all interviewed two of the applicants. One actually withdrew at the last minute. We were prepared to have the interview, and they backed out. So it was very tight. Both of the applicants were great interviews. It was a hard decision to make. And Michael came out ahead. He has some board experience, as you see in his application, with Box Elder Sanitation Board. And so he demonstrated a direct applicability to the Planning Commission position. We're very fortunate that we got the applicants we did, and staff is, and with Mayor Pro Tem Hanson's recommendation and Planning Commission Chair Goldstein's recommendation, we're supportive of that.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve resolution number 11, series 2024, appointing Michael Lowry to Planning Commission alternate?
And Mayor, I would move, and we'll provide some comments later, but would move to approve Resolution 11, Series 2024, a resolution appointing Michael Lowry to the Planning Commissioner alternate position.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for doing this process. I know the town, what would we say, wanted to cast a wide net, wanted to develop a pool of candidates. I forget what the language was. But really the intent here was really to put this out and try to get the best and the brightest from our community to apply. And I'm really happy that we had two very quality candidates apply. It's a small world, and I actually know Mr. Lowry back from my law enforcement days. I know that he is someone who knows and appreciates rules. I also know that he is someone who has some board and kind of leadership experience, both in his current board position and also he served as a command staff member in a law enforcement agency. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank Michael for applying, for serving your community. It is sometimes a thankless job. Certainly it's a volunteer job, and I just wanted to commend you for stepping up, and I wholeheartedly support your application here and appointment.
Luke? Oh. Trigger finger? All right. All those in favor of passing resolution number 11, series 2022-24, resolution appointing Michael Lowry to the Planning Commission alternate, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Michael, you passed through unanimously. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was a loud yay.
I said it loud. Is that what you're talking about me? I don't know what happened. Like, it was like, whoa. Didn't feel like I was saying it any louder until I heard it.